You're listening to the weekly Parsha podcast recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramat Beit Shemesh Israel, 5777, 2017. This week's Parsha is Parsha's Vayakhel-Pekudei. I'd like to share with you something, slightly different format than you might be used to from my shiurim. I'd like to share with you some stories, actually, and then a beautiful idea based on the midrash in our Parsha. When I was a young man between the ages of 15 and 20, I used to go almost every single week, to Brooklyn, to Borough Park, and I would go there for voice lessons. And during my time there, my bubby, my grandmother, lived not far from where I would go for my voice lessons. So each week, I would get to spend time with her. She would make me dinner, and she would tell me stories about her life in the old country. She grew up in Poland. She moved to Israel in the 1930s, to what was then called Palestine. And she would tell me stories about her life. She would tell me stories about her father. His name was Rabbi Yosef Streisand. He was a Jew, a carpenter. That was how he made his living. And he had many students. My grandfather, my bubby's husband, my Zaidi, was one of his students. And he was a very devout person. He was very committed to his Yiddishkeit, to his Judaism. And there were many stories that she would tell me to describe this. One of the stories I remember her telling me was how on Fridays, when he lived in Haifa, when he lived in Israel, so right before Shabbos, at that time, the idea of the car, the automobile had just begun to become more common. And he would literally lie down in the street on Friday afternoon to stop the traffic, to stop people from driving on Shabbos, because it's forbidden to drive on Shabbos. Another story I remember about my great-grandfather is that there was a fire once in his shul, and this is back in Poland, in the town of Bryzhan. There was a fire in the shul, and he ran to the shul. The place was burning down, but he ran inside, and he saved the Sifrei Torah. He saved the Torah scrolls. Another profound short story that my bubby told me about him was that on Friday nights, he would wait until the last people, in shul in those times, in the synagogue, so there would be visitors who were visiting the town, and they didn't have anywhere to eat, and people would take them home. People would give them a place to eat. And he would wait till the end. The people who nobody else really wanted to invite to their house, he would invite them. And there was a particular man with a very bad smell. Perhaps he hadn't showered or bathed in many months. And nobody else wanted to take him home. But my great-grandfather, Rabbi Yosef, he took him home. And my bubby told me how she remembered that the smell was so bad that she and her sister and her mother couldn't stay at the table. But my great-grandfather didn't want to embarrass him, and he sat the whole meal alongside this man who had come to be machnes orach, to greet and to bring into his home and to take care of his guest. Now, why am I starting off telling you some stories? It's not my usual way. It's not my usual format. You'll soon find out why I did this. I'd like to turn now to the Parsha. I'd like to turn to our Parsha. And actually, the midrash continues speaking about what we spoke about last week, which is the character, the personality, the individual named Betzalel. Betzalel was a young man. He was 12 years old, 13 years old, and he was incredibly talented. He was filled with wisdom, with intuition, with understanding, with knowledge. And the Ruach Elokim, he was filled with the Spirit of God that rested within him in order to be able to construct the Mishkan, to create all of the different parts of the Mishkan, in order for him to be able to guide all of those who were involved in the malacha, in the construction, in the creation of all of those parts of the tabernacle, which would be used as a vehicle, as we've said, to be able to interact with God, to serve God, to come into a relationship with Hashem. Now, last week we spoke about one element of who Betzalel was and how Hashem has a certain thing that he wants to bring into the world, a certain talent, a certain greatness, a certain manifestation within the world that has to happen. And depending on the person, depending on the choices that are made, so those things happen. That's what we spoke about last week. I'd like to add a new idea, or another dimension perhaps, of this idea based on the midrashim that are in this week's Parsha, Parshas Vayakhel. So last time we spoke about the fact that the verse says, Re'ei anechi karasi b'shem Betzalel, that Hashem says, behold, I have called out in the name of Betzalel. So we have a similar lashon, we have a similar language in our Parsha. It says, Ru'u kar Hashem b'shem Betzalel. So very almost identical language. Behold, Hashem has called the name of Betzalel. So the midrash says like this, Davar acher, another explanation, Ru'u kar Hashem. Behold how Hashem has called. Matkarin u'manichin v'itoi Aliyav ben Achisamach v'gomer. The verse refers to Betzalel. It speaks about the fact that he came from Betzalel ben Uri ben Hur. He was the son of Uri, the son of Hur. So we see that we have his yichus, we have his lineage, and we also say that he comes from Matei Yehuda, the tribe of Judah. Also, we speak about someone else who was working with him, Aliyav ben Achisamach, and he was from the tribe of Dan. And so the midrash wants to understand, why does it mention the lineage? Why does it tell us it was Betzalel ben Hur, he was the son of Hur? Why does it tell us Ahaliyav ben Achisamach? Why does it tell us he was the son of Achisamach? What is the significance of it? Why does it tell us his tribe? So the midrash says, Shevach loy, Shevach la'aviv. It's a praise to him, and it's a praise to his father. Shevach mishpachtei, and it's a praise to his family. Shevach l'shevet sheyasa mimenu, and it's a praise to the tribe from which he comes. So the Torah is giving us his lineage in order to describe the greatness, the praise of this individual for the great deeds that he is doing, the praise to his parents, his grandparents, and to his entire tribe. So what is the idea here? We need to understand. Also, interestingly, the midrash says it's not always for good that we find that this is this type of situation, but we also find this in the negative sense as well in the Torah. Umadkarin u'mashachakim, they're mentioned in the negative way. V'shem imay shlemis v'asdibri l'mateidan. It refers to the one who was Makal, who cursed that his mother was Shlomis, the daughter of Divri, from the tribe of Dan. Genai la u'la'avia u'l'mishpachta v'l'shevet sheyasasa mimenu. And it's coming to say that there's something negative about this person, something negative about his mother and his grandfather and his very tribe. And the midrash gives a few other examples. And we need to understand still, the midrash is telling us something, and there's a depth here. What is the idea? What is the midrash coming to teach us when it tells us that when there's something negative about a person, or where there's something positive about a person, so it reflects in a negative or a positive way on his parents and on his grandparents and on his very tribe? What is the depth of that idea? I'd like to share with you two more pieces in the midrash, and hopefully after that we'll start to see what the idea is, what the pieces of the picture will start to come together. Davar Acher, says the Medrash, Ru'u kara Hashem b'shem Betzalel ben Uri ben Hur. See, behold, Hashem is called in the name of Betzalel ben Uri ben Hur. Ma ra'a lahazir kan Hur. Why does the Torah mention here his grandfather's name Hur? It's telling us as follows: Ela b'shoshe bikshu Yisrael avoid avodas kachavim. When the Jewish people had gone to serve the golden calf, Nasa nafshe l'kodesh baruch hu v'lo hinichon. Hur got up and stood in the way. He said, this is not okay. He stood up for the honor of God, and he said, we cannot serve this idolatry. Amdu v'haraguhu. And then, the people of Israel, in their haste and in their feverish zealousness to serve this idolatry, they went and killed Hur. Amar le'HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this was the grandfather of Betzalel. Hashem says to him like this, Chayecha, I promise you, Shani porei alecha, that I'm going to pay you back, that you're going to get paid for this great deed that you did. Mashal. Says the Medrash, it's analogous to a king that his legions rebelled against him. Amad sarat savashalo. Now the general of his army got up, and he started to do battle with the legions. Amar lahem ala melech atem mordim, and he said to them, you're rebelling against the king. Amdu v'hargu oso. The legions got up and they killed him. They overpowered him. Amar hamelech. After the king saw this, he said, if he would have given me money, would I not have to pay him back? Certainly, he gave his soul for me. What can I do for him? So the king says, any children that this general has, I'm going to place them, to make them extremely important people in the empire. Kach, in a similar way, when the Jewish people made the golden calf, Hur got up and he tried to prevent them. He gave up his life. So Hashem says, I swear, any children that you have, I'm going to give them a good name in the world. As the verse says, behold, Hashem is called in the name of Betzalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur. So in the merit of his grandfather Hur, in the merit of that great sacrifice that he made, Hashem promised that he would have children and grandchildren who would be outstanding individuals, important ministers in the empire of God, as it were. So he had this grandson named Betzalel. Very interesting. We spoke last week about the fact that Betzalel came from Miriam. It was in her merit. Indeed, the next piece in the midrash speaks about that fact, that it was in her merit. So we have the merit of his grandfather, Hur, the merit of his grandmother, Miriam. The midrash also says, where did all of this honor come from for Betzalel? Mishevet Yehuda. It came from the fact that he was a member of the tribe of Judah. So we seem to have multiple factors that are involved in bringing about this amazing individual, giving him the talents that he has. But there's another factor, the Midrash tells us, which is a foundational reason why Betzalel merited to have these great abilities. The Davar Achra Maleo, so the Midrash says, another explanation. The verse says, I filled him up, God says. Kol ha-chochma hazeh minayin. Where did all of this wisdom, where did all of this artistry come from? Min HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It came from God himself. Ruach Elokim, as the verse says, he was filled with the Spirit of God. And we also find when it came to Joshua, great individual, leader of the Jewish people after Moshe Rabbeinu, Shubami Yosef, he came from the tribe of Joseph. He came from the tribe of Ephraim. Umak Sivbo. What does the verse say? Yoshua ben Nun molei ruach chochma. That Joshua, the son of Nun, was filled with a spirit of wisdom. So where did his power come from? Where did his ability come from? It came from God. We find also, when it came to Asniel, the son of Kenaz, he came from the tribe of Judah. Maksivbo. What does the verse say in Shoftim? In Judges chapter 3, verse 10, V'atihil av ruach Hashem, that the Spirit of God rested upon him. So in all these instances we see that it wasn't the tribe, it wasn't where he was from, it wasn't about his family, it was the Spirit of God itself. So how do we resolve the seeming contradiction between these two different midrashim? The midrashim seem to say it has to do with his grandfather, it has to do with his tribe. But here we see that it has to do with the Ruach Elikim, the Spirit of God that's manifest inside of him. What's the resolution of this? Now before we answer this, one more small piece in the midrash I want to share with you. Very interesting, intriguing point. It seems to be difficult to understand. Vayimaleo Ruach Elokim. Midrash says God filled him with the Spirit of God. V'lo zeh bilvad. Not only Betzalel, he wasn't the only one. Ela kol mi shenisasek b'melechas hamishkan. Anyone who is involved in the preparation of the tabernacle, nasam b'HaKadosh Baruch Hu chochma uvina v'das. Hashem placed into that person wisdom, understanding, knowledge. Shenemar, as the verse says, Vayasu kol chacham lev. Verse in chapter 36, verse 8 says that all of those who had wisdom in their hearts, they were involved in the making of the tabernacle. Now the Midrash says something pliadik, unbelievable. V'lo b'vnei Adam, not just the human beings who were involved, el afilu b'beheimo v'chaya, even the animals. Shenemar, as the verse says, chachma usfuna bahema, that there is knowledge and wisdom in them. The word bahema means in them. But as the Eitz Yosef explains, it could have just said bahem, which is how we normally say in them. But instead it says bahema, which can also be read behema ksiv, as the Midrash says. It's written animals. Shenina chachma ba'adam uva behema. That wisdom was placed into man and into animals. But the Torah only speaks about Betzalel as having been filled with this wisdom, and the Midrash goes on to explain why. As we said before, it's in the merit of his tribe, the Mata Yehuda, or it's in the merit of his family, etc. But what we see here is very interesting. We need to understand this, and with Hashem's help we'll have an understanding of it based on the idea that I want to share. But what is the idea? That we understand people can be filled with wisdom. We understand, perhaps even as the Eitz Yosef explains, that it could be the Behema is speaking about, not literally animals, but people who are like animals, that they don't have too much wisdom. Even they were filled with wisdom. But that's not the Pashup Pshat. The simple understanding, what's the Midrash telling us? That even the animals are filled with wisdom. So I believe that there's a great depth that's being taught in this Midrash. And soon we'll understand why I started out telling you some stories about my great-grandfather. And the depth here of the Midrash, it's teaching us, look, Hashem manifests in the world. Hashem manifests in my life. And that's the main manifestation, that's the main reason why good things occur to me, or the source of my abilities, my artistic abilities, my talents, my understandings in Torah, whatever it is. The reason is that happens, as the Midrash said, it's not per se because of my tribe. It's not because of my grandparents. It's the Ruach Elokim. It's the Spirit of God manifesting specifically in my life directly. Very interesting. That, I believe, is the pshat in the midrash. But how does it manifest? Through what vehicle does God's Spirit manifest in my life? It manifests in my life because of my family, or through my family, through my parents, through my grandparents, through my tribe, through the situation that God places me in this world. Everything is tailor-made for me. Why do I have musical ability? Well, it's because my mother has musical ability. My father has a beautiful voice. My grandmother, she has the ability to write songs. My great-grandparents, my tribe, perhaps there are people who are from the tribe of Levi. Many Levites have musical ability. Hashem wanted me to be who I am and to have my specific set of abilities and talents. And He placed me within a certain family, within a certain tribe. Betzalel saw that his grandfather, Hur, made the ultimate sacrifice, an unbelievable sacrifice. He gave up his life and stood up for God. That message was not lost on Betzalel. He was somebody, it's like it almost comes in two directions. It's Hashem makes a promise that Hur, you're somebody who is willing to give up your life for me. I'm going to give something to your grandchildren. But it also works in the opposite direction. Betzalel saw that his grandfather was somebody who dedicated his life to God, was willing to give up his life for God. And so he was willing to use his artistic abilities that Hashem had planted within him for God. It was something that he saw in his family. He saw his grandfather do, and he did that as well. So the bottom line is that Hashem manifests in our lives in many different ways, but specifically through the family, through our situation, our family situation, those who surround us. It's possible to see if we look. Sometimes we need to look more carefully. But it's possible to see within our family situation the life that Hashem, the place in life where Hashem placed us in the world. That is the foundation of who we are. And I think that that's perhaps part of the reason that the midrash says that even the animals, when they were involved in the Melechas HaMishkan, when they were involved in somehow helping in creating the different parts of the tabernacle, they were also affected. When Hashem manifests, the tabernacle represents Hashem's manifestation in the world. It's the place where we get to serve God. It's the place where we interact with God, where we interface with the spiritual realms. So when someone enters into that place, one merits to see an open manifestation of God. And that's something that's manifest, as we said, in one's family, but it also can manifest in the very animals that are involved with it. You see something like this in the Chazal. The Chazal teach us that the donkey of Pinchas ben Yair, that the donkey of this great sage, had certain spiritual characteristics. He would only eat certain types of foods, that animal. And the reason is because when God manifests in our life, it doesn't just happen through ourselves. It manifests in every aspect of our life. It manifests even in the animals and all that surrounds us. If Hashem is there, Hashem is really there. So there are two take-homes I'd like to share. One is the fact that it's important to look and see and recognize and appreciate that the situations that we find ourselves in, whether they are outstandingly good or whether sometimes they are challenging, all of these situations are truly manifestations of Hashem's guiding love, specific for us, to place us within this situation in order for us to grow and to be able to manifest our special talents. Everything is tailor-made for us. So that recognition, that gratitude, that awareness is the first point. And the second point is that the stories that we create, the stories that we tell our children and our grandchildren, they affect who they will be. When my grandmother told me those stories about her father, told me the incredible commitment that he had to his Yiddishkeit, to his service of God, to the things that he held were important, whether it was running into that shul to grab those Sifrei Torah out of that burning synagogue, or whether it was lying down in the street, or whether it was truly doing Hachnasas Orchim, making somebody feel comfortable when no one else would. These are things that are etched in my mind, etched in my memory. They make me who I am today. And I have an opportunity today to tell, first of all, these stories to my children, which I do, but also I get to write my own stories of commitment, my own stories of greatness, which hopefully my children will share with their grandchildren. The first midrash that we read really brings out this idea. It was about the fact that when Betzalel was mentioned in a positive way, it wasn't just something positive for him. It was also positive for his grandfather, for Hur, for his father, for his tribe. And when there was a negative situation, it was a negative statement for that person's parents and grandparents and tribe. And I think that it's important that we understand and we take to heart that the actions that we do, the goodness that we bring into the world, serves as a merit for our parents and our grandparents and our tribe, so to speak. And the reason is because who we are is a reflection of who they were. And who we are is going to shape and form who our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren will be after us. But all of this comes back. All of it comes down to who is the one who shapes and fills all of that which we do. It's Hashem himself. Hashem is intimately involved in our lives, guiding us, helping us, showing us what we need to do, giving us the talents, creating the situations that we are born into and that our children and grandchildren are born into. But we become a partner with God through this process, through the recognition, through the awareness, through the gratitude, and through a conscious effort to be great people ourselves. So I want to bless you, and please bless me, that Hashem should help us, that we should be able indeed to have this recognition, to have this awareness, to have this gratitude, and that we should be able to write and tell the most beautiful stories of commitment and greatness to our children and our grandchildren. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.